DeRae, we've got a guest for episode 15. We're going to talk leadership, vulnerability. You ready for it?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Roll the intro. Welcome into episode 15 of Cautious Coffee. My name's Austin Staton, joined alongside my co-host DeRae Crane. And DeRae, we've got a fun guest on today's show, and that's Justin Cade, who we've mentioned. We've had on the show sort of as like input here and there on the show. But today we're having him on for a full episode. We're going to talk leadership and vulnerability. And DeRae, first off, we took last week off. How is everything going on your end? Are you surviving the Delta variant?
Absolutely. I was going to say something snarky, but
do it. Snark.
You know, I have no concerns of anything that's going on. There's a lot of volleying between what people believe and what's actually happening, and I think folks need to definitely do what's best for themselves.
And go back and listen to the episode where we talk about
yes, but things are going great otherwise. I tell people that I had a fantastic quarantine lockdown. Got in really good shape, got a lot of good work done, school.
Are you training for anything?
I'm training to get old. Like my truck, I have a 2002 Dodge Ram, 87,000 miles on it. It's in really good shape. I want to be just like it when I get old. I just want to be in really good shape.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's some traveling to Europe, France.
Maybe it could be Paris 2024. Who knows?
There we go. I was trying to get it out of you.
We're going to take Cautious Coffee on the road in the meantime, and I'll do an assessment and see if this old guy has anything in the tank.
We will definitely document that journey here on Cautious Coffee. If you want to follow that journey, of course, follow DeRae on social media. That's at Dynamo Crane on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Austin Staton. And of course, all of our social media channels at Cautious Coffee. And DeRae, we actually kind of blew up on TikTok. I know I've mentioned TikTok a few times, but some of our vaccine comments and COVID comments did pretty well on TikTok. I think one of them, we had something like 300 hours worth of playtime for a video clip, and something like 6,000 views, 100 plus likes, 60 plus comments. So yeah, maybe TikTok's the future.
You know what? I don't disagree. My girlfriend TikToks. Thinking about bringing her on as a producer to Cautious Coffee because she would crush it. She's a natural.
Well, that's good.
You've seen some of her work.
I have. Yeah. And Justin, we've got to ask you: are you into TikTok?
I am not. I am not a TikToker.
That's probably a good thing.
My daughter is only 2.5, so she's not into it quite yet either. So we are a TikTok-free household right now.
All right. Well, DeRae, I want you to actually give a proper introduction for Justin. Tell him the connection and kind of how you guys met and why we wanted to have him on today.
Absolutely. Justin Cade was my very first boss at the company that I work for currently, and I was like, I want to be like this guy. How about that? Those are the bosses that I try to work for, and I'll opt out of a job if I don't want to be like that guy or that gal, right? So that's kind of how I make decisions about a job or a career change, for that matter. And I worked for him for about a year, and he's been a huge advocate for me. And we would always chop it up and talk about everything under the sun. And we've stayed. What I've been at the company, almost 3 years now. So, and I'm going on my 4th boss here soon. So, I always reach back to Justin if I have, a question about, something going on in corporate America, being that it's, my first role since, leaving the military in a large corporation. So Justin's, been there, and I imagine he's going to continue to be there going into the future. So I'm really excited to have him on, and we talk a great deal about leadership. So it made sense to have him on.
And just for some more inside baseball and background on Justin. So I've only met Justin once in person, and that was for beers probably 3-4 months ago. And I think we're going to hopefully do it again soon. But Justin was a big supporter when DeRae and I launched Cautious Coffee before it was a podcast, and joining the conversations each week and being a huge advocate and supporter. So Justin, we're really excited to have you on for a full episode of Cautious Coffee, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, and DeRae, thank you for what you said. The comment comment like that is what makes it worth it. When someone says, I want to be like that person in some way. It was an amazing journey we went on together through the military program you came in through, and the spirit and the camaraderie you two built through Cautious Coffee, and giving people a place to gather when we didn't really know what was going on and talk about things that were going on in their lives and the world was really special. And I'm glad it took off at the company we worked at, and I'm glad to see that y'all have kept it going.
At least 100 episodes. That's the plan.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get one on the moon. Eventually, I see Richard Branson is offering people, trips to space. So we might have to apply.
I think it's $400,000 is what he's charging. So if anyone wants to sponsor us, we will wear your brand in space while doing Cautious Coffee. So hit us up. Contact cautiouscoffee.com. We'll definitely have that conversation.
And as much as Austin and Justin, as much as you guys talk, it's like you only met one time. That blows my mind.
Yeah. That's wild.
We seem closer. We seem like we might hang out every Friday.
Well, that's a good thing. And I think one thing that we're excited to talk about today is like leadership and vulnerability. And DeRae, you came up with this topic. Why was it important for you for us to have this conversation on leadership and vulnerability? And what does it mean to you?
Succinctly, I wanted to chat about it because I find, a lot of leaders out there, and I have to do this. They're leaders, and you can tell that they're in it for themselves. And we can even look at our political leaders that don't necessarily have the group or the tribe's best interest in mind when they make decisions. So that's why I want to talk about it. And you see it at every level. You see it in the military, where it can be very detrimental to people, especially in a war zone area. Or you see it in corporate America, especially when you have a lot of really high performers, individual contributors, and then they're put in leadership positions, and they fall on their face, and then they'll take credit for when things go well, but then they want to point fingers when things go poorly, and it doesn't work like that.
And there are people in leadership positions that have no business being there. Whether it was, maybe they worked hard and they've given results. Maybe they've brought, positive value to the company financially. But I'm not sure that always translates to leadership, like you said. I think it's more of the leadership, as you say. So, we kind of posed this question on our social media platforms this week, and it was, what makes a good leader? So we had some responses on Instagram. Manny says, one who knows how to follow. Simon says, protecting the group, being led from harm. And maybe our future producer for Cautious Coffee, she said, one that brings out the best in you. And then my mom, shout out to my mom for actually responding. She says, leadership is empowering and elevating people to be their best. We had another question. Is there power in vulnerability when it comes to leadership? We had an answer to that, and it was only to a certain extent. A leader has to stay in control most of the time. And our last question was, who has inspired you as a leader? And we didn't get a name in particular, but the comment was the previous team lead would always back the team. So in kind of taking all of that into account, Justin, I'll start with you. Do you think those are maybe 3 important questions to ask when evaluating leadership, or do you think they don't matter at all?
I think they matter a lot, and I'll touch on a couple of points you made. There's a lot of people that are in leadership roles that shouldn't be. I think that happens to everyone. Leadership is maybe there's a natural leader out there somewhere in the world. I haven't met them yet. I know my first go round in the corporate leadership was a failure from a performance standpoint. Did I have the qualities and treat the team the way I wish I had? I did a lot of the things you said that aren't great for leaders to do, and DeRae made points around that aren't great for leaders to do. I tried to impose myself down. I'm up here, do it my way, right? I was successful, this will make you successful. It was a team that I had come up through and luckily had trusting relationships with for them to eventually point it out to me and say how much they hated working for me and gave me the insight and the feedback to grow. It's not immediate. It took me years to process through some of that. And then it took another round of feedback from my peer group and some leadership groups, what I needed to work on and what I needed to do, because it's hard coming from an individual contributor standpoint, being put in a leadership role. No one tells you what to do differently. No one, because it's hard. I don't know that they can. I think they can give you advice. You can look at them as role models, but it's very hard to understand. It's not so much what I do anymore. It's how I lead. It's not the things I create or the spreadsheets I work on every day. It's how I treat people. And it's how, I love the comment about, it's how I make someone their best. How can I be there for the team? And that comes into the servant leadership and a lot of that model that I think is really important. And vulnerability is part of that. I mean, Brene Brown made it famous here in Houston, right? I mean, she's the spark on that around being authentic and sharing yourself and understanding who you are. And people see that. You know, you can have leaders that come up and give their talks or their speeches, and you know whether they're being themselves or not. You can read an email from your CEO and know, did they write it or did the comms team write that? You feel it and you know it. Yeah. And so when that person's up there and saying, here's what's going on and here's what we're going to do as a company, that authentic, genuine person either comes out or it doesn't. And if you've had people in your career, to the third part, that they're like that, you see it and you hold on to it and you hold that up as your model. And when you don't, you learn from that too. You learn, I don't want to be that person. I want to be someone different. But all of it takes time.
I'm going to pose this question to both of you because DeRae, I know you've had extensive leadership experience in the military. And Justin, you were very open there about failing as a leader. And I think that is pretty incredible to be able to admit, right? Because if an experience doesn't go well, you know, maybe we forget about it, maybe we don't confront it, maybe we're not upfront about it. When you guys have been placed in leadership positions and maybe something hasn't worked, what has been that trigger point for you to step back and say, hey, look, I need to change or I need to do something differently? Because I feel like there are some people that are put in place in leadership positions that if something isn't working or it is detrimental to the team, their community, they continue on that path until they're replaced, fired, elected out of office. So what was that catalyst, I guess, that, created that change to say, all right, I've got to go down a different path?
I think you learn to ask people. And it's hard for people to trust to give that honest feedback. You have to even earn that part. So it usually starts out as little nibbles. In the company that DeRae and I work at now, I changed roles during the pandemic as part of a reorganization we went through. Joined a new commodity virtually, have met some of the team I work with now, either as peers or underneath me in my region, but have never worked directly with any of them. And coming from a role I was very comfortable in, that I knew a lot about and had a lot of history and growth in, joining a new team was difficult to find my place, both again with my peers and my team. And I had some rocky starts here and there, and you just have to ask people, how am I showing up right now? I want to be a positive member of this team. What am I doing that's getting in the way of that? And you might get, here's a little comment to start with. You could have done this, or you said this one time. And then people wait to see what you do. What do you do with that? Do you get defensive? Do you get dismissive? Or do you thank them and try to absorb it? And the more you do it, the more you get back out of it. And then the more those relationships build. And so that to me is the key part, is being able to hear feedback from others on what you can do better and want that feedback.
My experience, I can say, I agree with Justin that you have to be able to ask. And fortunately, want to make sure it's fortunately, not unfortunately. In the military, you're paired with an enlisted leader, like someone who's been in 10 years already. And if you're lucky, you'll get someone, you're a shiny butter bar, as second lieutenants, that's what they're called. If you get you get a platoon sergeant who's squared away, who, believes and lives the Army values, worth his weight or her weight in gold, quite honestly, because they show you what right looks like. And I was very fortunate, even on my deployment. Oh my goodness. Like, she would carry me at some point in time simply because, I'm new to the organization, relatively new, and she's been in 15 years. Why wouldn't I listen to her? And she never said anything that was wrong. So you're not alone. That's, I think, a lot of organizations, if I think about what Justin said earlier, it seems as though he was, somewhat alone. He didn't have anyone to like show him what right looks like, right? Anyone to model he had someone probably that showed him, he thought like, hey, I'm doing the right things here. Why aren't these people, falling in line? And it was actually not the right way. All right. So, good on him for reassessing, hey, I need to move in a different direction. And a lot of times leaders are unwilling to, ask down. And when I mentioned the Army values, one of my issues is that not everyone will live by them. And I value them greatly. And the company that Justin and I work for now, they had values that were similar to values I was already familiar with. So that was really attractive to me as far as joining that organization. And then, seeing more that they're not just words on the wall. Like, I need to see it lived. And in a large organization, you're just going to come upon people that don't necessarily believe in that stuff. They think it's mumbo jumbo and, it's magical, and they don't want to be vulnerable. They're unwilling because personally, they probably haven't unpacked some things. It could trace back to their childhood or just how they were brought up. It could be the old guard way of thinking, where if a man or a woman shows vulnerability, people will perceive that as weakness. So what? That has nothing to do with you. Like, just because someone else perceives it as weakness doesn't mean you're weak. Let them think that you're weak and then run over them. That's okay. You if you're secure in yourself, you don't waste your energy thinking about, well, what other people thinking that I'm weak or I'm not a competent leader, or that how you're going to show up. That your people will follow you. Hey, we're knocking on the door of hell and we're about to kick it down. Right. So, that's the kind of the position you want to be in as a leader, where your subordinates matter more than anything else. You're willing to keep the shit from rolling downhill and splashing all over them, as it were.
I mean, I think you need to play to your team's strengths. You need to empower your team, right? You need to be brutally honest with them, and be okay with hearing feedback. Some of the best bosses that I've had have been people that will tell you when you screw up, tell you when you succeed, celebrate the wins, talk about the losses and how you can improve upon them. I look at, my time with IBC Houston, which is a nonprofit communications organization. And generally how we had constructed the board in the past was, people that have been in comms for 20 plus years. And my mindset was different. Like, when the people that I wanted on the board, I didn't care about their tenure. I cared about whether or not they were hungry and they wanted to go out and succeed and do what they could to help, promote the chapter to other people in Houston. And as a result, we were, nominated and won International Chapter of the Year. And I think it was just because we had the right people in place. We were very honest with each other. We were very transparent with each other. And I think that helped out. And DeRae, you mentioned the value system. I think values are incredibly important when it comes to companies, right? I think a company has to have some sort of purpose to be able to exist, to be able to succeed. And I don't know that it can just be about making money anymore. I think there's a lot of things in place, especially I feel like after the last 2 years is like ESG has been something that, shareholders really care about. There's a lot more accountability. But I think you have to be intentional with values. There's a company in Houston, their value
Lots
page.
of those.
Yeah, a lot of companies in Houston. There's a company in Houston that they're relatively new. It's still technically a startup company, but they've got a values page and it's a giant word cloud. And it seems like every single person like submitted something, and I think a value has to have a purpose behind it, right? Some of the words on there are not purpose driven. I think when you have 25 words listed on your values page, it's like, do you really know what you stand for? And when it comes to, I guess, leadership, I'm not sure where I'm going here, but when it comes to leadership, do you have to have, your own value system in place on how you lead? Is it knowing it's okay to be vulnerable? Is it focusing on excellence? Is it focusing on, anything? Do you have to have your own internal value system in place? And you kind of alluded to it, DeRae, with the military background and, the company you work for now, aligning with a lot of those same values.
Yes. Short answer is yes. I think the pressure you mentioned, you want to be able to perform and deliver, and that, people are under pressure. They have these deadlines that they need to meet, and you start behaving in a certain way because, self-preservation kicks in. You're like, well, if I fail, then I'm going to have to do this. And then, it becomes problematic. You need to be able to manage that within yourself. And you need to be able to have a self-awareness. That's huge for a leader because some leaders won't even recognize it. They won't recognize when they're being toxic. They won't, at the end of the day, reflect on, what they have going on within their teams or how they even showed up. I think, Justin alluded to that earlier when he was just, you got to ask the question. And if you don't, you find yourself where your team, now you have an adversarial relationship with them. And that's never good.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And I'll try to do a show reference here, but I think it was episode 3 where he said, "Don't give fear a vote." And
yeah. I love the references. This is why you should be on the podcast more.
If you guys need to expand your branding, that's the slogan that needs to go on there because it applies through so many of the episodes and topics you've had. But for me, it's don't let fear get a vote on this. I have a new leader, even in my team. So the team I joined got a new leader at a very, very senior level, came from a different company, and brought in a concept that we've talked about a lot at the company we work at now, which is, fail. It's okay. Fail fast, fail a lot. And everyone goes, sure. Until end of year comes around, until you start actually putting a number on how I did. She basically told us, if you don't fail on a high percentage of what you put down, you weren't trying hard enough and we weren't learning enough. So you better start failing now. And that kind of honesty that came through there from her, I mean, it's part of who she is. And so it came through very clearly. And we just had our mid-years where we work, or I did at least. And we went through where didn't I do what I was going to do? And the list is long. The continued pandemic has affected a lot of what I wanted to come in. And again, new leader and new group, you have grand ideas of things you can do. And then, reality punches you in the mouth and you change your plan. It's hard to get comfort in that. You have to earn it again. You have to earn that trust. And to one of DeRae's points, I had 2 conversations in my early leadership role in this new team with people on my team that I felt needed to hear something, needed to hear about something they had done that could get in their way of success. And both of them were shocked when I had those conversations with them. Didn't really know how to handle it. At first, I think both were just pretty silent and took it and processed it, which is good for them. That's actually a win. Both came back to me and said, "Thank you for the first real feedback I've gotten on me in years." One of them said, "I've never gotten in my career." It's the first time someone's taken the time to say, here's something that's going to keep you from being successful. And that's the kind of thing that starts to earn your trust. It's hard to do. Feedback like that, that's what we call critical, but really is supportive feedback, is hard. You have to practice it to get comfortable with it. I had a leader that basically told me, yeah, it's going to be hard your first few times. But if you go in there and tell them, I'm trying to help you, and that's why I'm doing this. This isn't to start, putting you on a performance plan. This is about you getting better. If you come in that way and you just talk and you're honest about it, they'll feel it and they'll hear it. And the more you do it, the more you'll see how they appreciate it. And then it gets easy. It gets really easy after that. But it's a hard hill to climb. And it's all based around trust. It's all based around you coming from a place around changing the focus from you, to DeRae's point earlier. Am I a manager and I want me to look good? Or am I a leader and I want my team and my team members to look good?
I like that a lot. There's three things that I actually wrote down on my notes while you were talking. So we've got about 27 minutes into the show right now. So I kind of want to pose these three questions to end up. And I'll start with the first one for both of you. But failure. You mentioned the importance of failure. I had a boss once that said that it's okay to fail as long as you fail forward. I agree. That shows that you're learning, shows that you're growing. You learn from your mistakes and you improve upon it. When we look at sports, for example, it's so hard for a team to go undefeated. And whenever you have a team that is, let's look at college basketball, for example. You're undefeated late in the season, but you get a upset loss. Every single time that happens, the coach says, it's probably a good thing. We needed to learn what it's like to lose so it doesn't happen again. Maybe that's just coach talk, but why is failure good for leaders? And I don't think failure should be in your value system, but I think being able to learn and adapt and pivot is good. But why do you guys think failure is good? Or is it something that you shouldn't strive for?
But it kind of ties into your question in that, how a leader shows up. They show up and they are just, perfect haircut, tie, or they're just dressed to the gills. They have a certain image. It's like this facade they're projecting to everyone. That's perfect. They're performers. They're well adjusted. They're not easily shaken. But behind closed doors, they might be, a volcano waiting to erupt. Who knows? And I think bringing that vulnerability to your team and, hey, hello, I'm a human too. I'm human like you. I fail at stuff. I've failed a lot more than I have succeeded. Like if you can come and share that with your team and let them know, hey, I'm really no different. I may just spend a little more time, focused on my goals. That's why I'm in this position. But I can't continue to go forward without you all. So we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. I'm gonna grab an oar and I'm gonna start rowing just like everyone else, right? But being willing to share those failures or like give actual stories of something that you failed at, and then what you learn from it, you shape the culture, allowing folks the grace and the space to learn, fail, and get better.
I kind of like how you phrased it. Striving to fail, as long as you're doing it to try to find what you can do. How far can I go before I fail? But to DeRae's point, what can I learn from that point to where the next time I can go further? If I'd stayed managing a team of 2 or 3, I would have been just managing a team of 2 or 3. But I pushed myself. What can I do to get to that point of failure each time and learn from it so that I can do more and better and be there for the people that are depending on me for that role of leadership, to be better in that place for them. So there's a component of it where I do want to push myself to where I get to that point, to where I can learn more. If I stay in my little safe zone, I can stay where I'm at, but I'm not going to be the best I could be for the people around me.
And I think you can't internalize how it shakes out either way, Justin, because if you inherit a really good situation and you perform well, Did you really knock it out of the park? Or were you just lucky? And if you inherit a poor situation and it continues to go poorly, well, now you're unlucky. So there's, two sides to that coin. And we had an episode on luck. Not sure which one it was.
Lucky number 7.
Okay. But, so we have to take that into account as well. I think it really comes to, fail. That's good. But I want to encourage my teams, and I always have, to do their best. Like, give me your best. I'm going to give you my best. And then how it shakes out, well, sometimes we don't have any control over that. But, we're not going to go down without a fight. So I just want my folks scrappy. I want them trying. We can't do everything, but we're going to do our best. We're going to look at this big, hairy, audacious goal, and we're going to try to knock it out.
And I think that's where people that strive to have control struggle, because of that randomness of everything that comes into our lives. Yeah. We can put ourselves in the best position to have optionality everywhere we are. And that is helpful. But that doesn't mean a random event is going to come through and come in the face of what we were trying to accomplish. And you're right, you can't say that, you can't internalize that and make yourself suffer over those. You try to learn from it. You try to say, how could we have done, and given ourselves even more options to where that could have been lessened.
One of the things that's inspiring to me is seeing people from all different backgrounds, all different age groups lead. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in the business sense, right? Like, you don't have to be a 15-year-old entrepreneur or a 55-year-old CEO of a Fortune 10 company. I think that you can lead from wherever you are, regardless of what your role is. But I know that's not necessarily a team leader. And so I know there's probably a difference between a team leader and a leader. So I want to pose a question to you, because I think there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this podcast saying, well, is this relevant for me? I mean, I'm only, middle management at this point, or just a individual contributor for my team.
I'm entry level. What are you talking about?
Entry level, can you lead from regardless of where you are in your company?
Be the example, Austin. It's as simple as that. Be the example. It's not, do as I say and not as I do. It's in everything that you do. I guess if you have the self-awareness and the forethought to think, hey, maybe one day I'll be in a leadership role, but it even comes down to like your family, right? How you are with your spouse. If you're the head of the household, how do you lead that household? Be the example. That's going to be my takeaway, by the way.
To answer your question, Austin, yes, you can lead from wherever you are. And that's really, leadership is how you treat people. If I'm in an individual contributor role, I'm in an entry-level role, how I treat the people that are training me, how I treat the people around me, how I treat my line manager, how I treat the person that comes in to make sure we have copy or paper, how I treat the person that serves us coffee in the cafe. All of those matter, and they show who you are as a person, and positive people are attractive to bring other people to them. And those quiet leaders like that can have so much more influence on an organization than people realize. When you're that quiet voice, but the one, and not even when you don't want to speak up, just the quiet voice that you don't have the platform that others have, but that people respect you and know what you stand for, can have huge influences, quiet influences across a group. And stepping up a level, first level leaders, new leaders, are one of the most critical pieces of an organization. You hope, and this is not always true in any corporation, as you've ascended, they recognize real leadership and not just status or whatever, or success in prior, individual roles. The first level leaders have a lot of people under them that really need that leadership the most. You hope there's a weeding out as you go up. There's not always. You hope there is, but those first level leaders are the ones that I know the company that DeRae and I work for right now, we're focusing on a lot because we've really abandoned them in their leadership training and feedback. We've said, good luck, kind of figure it out. but we haven't invested the time to get them where they need to be. And that's a failing of ours, not theirs.
Is that a failure because of the world that we live in and the COVID-19 pandemic and not being able to fully adjust to working remotely? And, kind of beyond that, do we think that leadership has maybe changed in the past 18 months? Like how we lead, how we work with teams? And, maybe is there anything over the past 18 months during this entire pandemic that will take and actually impact us moving forward when it comes to leadership as a whole?
It's shined a light on mental health, that's for sure. And I think, when you become part of a large organization, that organization is somewhat of a machine, and the leaders on their way up, kind of become part of that machine. And I think it's good for those that are really secure in themselves to be able to, separate themselves from that machine and take a really good look at it, and understand that they still have to be human. I had a lecture from an executive coach, and my takeaway was he has to go in and reteach executives how to be human. That's wild. That's wild. You work your way up, you become part of the machine, you forget how to be human. You do analysis, you're very analytical, the way that you write, the way that you engage people. Maybe even you're two-faced because you've like bought into the office politics. I think one of the things that really helps me is like I'm the same way on Cautious Coffee. I'm the same way at work. I'm the same way with my platoon or my company. I'm the same way with my girlfriend, my dad, my parents. Like, this is DeRae, guys. Just want you all to know that. So it's very consistent in how I engage people. I'll greet you with a smile. I'm going to just meet you where you are, and hello, human. Let's people together.
Peopling. We legitimately need to put that on a shirt. Put it on the website. We've talked about it for a year. So.
I don't know if I ever mentioned that I got that from Alan Watts, by the way.
Oh, I thought it was DeRae Crane.
No, he said an apple tree will apple. So earth peoples.
All right.
Yeah, that's the logic behind it. But, I got to give him his shout out.
So you were inspired by it?
Yes. Okay. I remixed it.
Joseph, what about you? Last 18 months, has leadership changed? Is there anything that we can take from the last 18 months moving forward?
I'd say the core tenets don't change, but to DeRae's point, how we implement them does, and how we observe, how we interact does. And my takeaway is as a leader, it was really important for me to be able to see my people working. Not to see how hard they were working or when they got in or when they left, but just to be able to see them as a person and look at that and how it changed day to day. Is this person acting out of character? Are they more stressed? Is part of their character off? And that was how I checked in on people and how I knew that person's one of the most relaxed people I know, and they are tense. What's going on? You lose that here. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but there was a podcast a while back, sports podcast, with a host named Scott Van Pelt, and he was giving a point around people talk about athletes and how they always seem really great in interviews. They're super personable, really friendly, respectful, and then you go and see them do something in real life that's totally contrary to that. And he goes, yeah, it's easy to pretend to be a good guy for 5 minutes during an interview. And in the environment we're in, it's really easy for someone to pretend to be okay during a 15-minute catch-up. They can get their shit together for a few minutes, take a deep breath, get their cup of coffee, and show up super strong and competent. I'm ready to take you. Oh, you need me to take on more work? Sure, put it on my back. And then they sign off, and they look on, and they've got 3 kids in the same room with them because something's off at daycare or at school, and they've had to have them. They're a single parent. They've got an elderly parent they're caring for at the same time, whatever else is going on. And that facade that DeRae talks about melts away. And you can't see it anymore. And so as a leader, that care is still there, that core tenet of I'm going to care about my people. But how do I know that I'm actually doing it? And it's we always have check-ins with people. And at the beginning, people want to go, well, here's what I'm working on. Here's how busy I am. Here are the things I'm doing for the company. And you say, sure, sure. But how are you doing? And those conversations slowly transition to conversations that aren't about work and the work output, but about how that person is and how they're feeling and what's going on. And it's amazing what people have going on in their lives right now, across the board. Pandemic not, complicated by the pandemic. Showing up for people that way is what's changing. How do we do this in a virtual world right now? And how do people that are joining the workforce, that are coming in, how do we give them the skills to be successful in this world?
I think you both hit it, right on the nail on the head. DeRae with mental health and Justin talking about people first. I think you've got to humanize, the people that you work with. You've got to empower them. And I think you've got to actually know them. So when something's not okay, you can recognize that. I think a good leader is going to be able to recognize if you're putting up that facade for 15 minutes on a Zoom call and you've got all these issues going on, they're going to actually check in with you and not just have, a work call. Maybe they call you out of the blue, check in, see how you're really doing, and it's not actually a planned, 15-minute call on Zoom or Teams. So I think that the humanization factor is something that's going to stick around, as we continue this agile work environment where it's, maybe a hybrid between office life, work from home. And I think people are demanding that, they're demanding that kind of, accountability from their leadership as they look for places to work. I mean, we're seeing it in the tech industry, for example, with Apple and Google, and 30 to 40% of their employees saying, hey, we're not going to win back to the office. We've adapted to this new style. It allows us, to feel empowered, to be able to have this flexibility to be with our families or stay home or, work at different hours. And so change is important for leadership. And being able to adapt to that change and respond to it, I think, is incredibly important. But DeRae, Justin, we've gone on for about 45 minutes for episode 15 of the podcast. And I think it's been a great conversation on leadership and being vulnerable. And I want to give you both a moment real quick to give us a takeaway for our listeners out there on leadership vulnerability.
For me, it comes down to whatever you're going to do it as you. There's a lot of catchphrases around it right now, but if you choose to do something, do it honestly from who you are and where you are, and whatever the outcome, you can grow from it, learn from it, and you'll build relationships around it.
Bottom line up front, be the example. It's unnecessary for you to create this image of what you believe people want to see. The fact that you are being successful with all the baggage that you're carrying, it's okay to share what's in that bag. All right, it's fine, because that looks good upon you. It validates the struggle that you went through to get to where you are. And if you tell people, hey, I'm perfect, well, they're going to try to be perfect, and that's going to drive them insane because no one's perfect. So I'm going to piggyback on Justin. Be you, be consistent in all that you do, and be unafraid. Don't let fear get a vote in your own head.
I think my takeaway is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think sometimes we could be very prideful and we want to, take on the work ourselves to show that we can do something or that we can deliver results. But I think a true leader surrounds himself with people that are, that they trust, right? That they can go to for counsel, that they have a strong network. I mean, you look at leadership at the highest level in the country, whether it's corporate America or politics, you've got to have a strong staff. You've got to have a strong executive team, people that you trust to do the right thing, to inspire, to change. So don't be afraid to ask for help. You can't, go at it alone. We're stronger together at the end of the day. And I know that's pretty cliche, but those are my takeaways.
Is that from Planet of the Apes?
Maybe?
No,
I don't know.
I remixed that one too. Humans together strong.
Maybe I need to catch up on my what is it, Harrison Ford movies from the 70s. No, it wasn't Harrison Ford. Who was
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, right? He also had what was it, Let My People Go? Was that another one?
There were a lot from that movie.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm out of coffee, but if you want a coffee mug like this, head over to cautiouscoffee.com.
Yes.
You can buy some shirts,
We have plenty of
hoodies,
merch.
tank tops. Tank tops are probably better for the summer, but it might get a little bit cold here in about 4 months in Houston, so maybe you can check out a hoodie. But DeRae, for our people out there that want to follow us and connect with us, engage with us on social media, what's the best way for them to do so?
You know what? Yeah, I think you can just Google Cautious Coffee now, and it'll just pop up. All right, no, it'll be like the first one on top of the Google search. But you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn. Reach out to us. Let us know where we were right. Let us know where we're wrong. Let us know how we're imbeciles or geniuses. We're here for it.
And we can actually fact check the Google thing is true. We had a listener after episode 14 who sent in feedback, and this listener's from Europe, and said, hey, even in Europe, Cautious Coffee still #1 search result. But I think for him, the website showed up #1. So, it could be different from everyone. But Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on episode 15 of the Cautious Coffee podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is great. Thanks, Justin.
On that note, let's call it a show.
Until next time.
See ya.